Hey, it's Dana Steele. We're going to be speaking with our go-to attorney, Betsy Grubbs, here in just a few minutes. I try to get in touch with her and bring her here on the podcast at least once every 6 months because legal documents you need when you're losing a loved one or you've lost a loved one seem to just be changing. Families continue to fight, so now you need a power of attorney for your funeral. So I just, every once in a while try to bring Betsy on and let's talk about what's new in powers of attorney? What's new in elder care, legal paperwork, and everything else you need? So we'll be talking to Betsy about that in just a few minutes. Also, if you like this podcast, don't forget I have another one called Off Their Rockers that I do with a friend of mine, Lisa Forham. It is a podcast for women 50 plus who are, well, as they say in Monty Python, we aren't dead yet. We are still reinventing ourselves. We are still rocking, basically. So if you get a chance, check out Off Their Rockers, the podcast. After I lost my mom to Alzheimer's, I decided to take everything I learned and everyone I've met since and share that information and the lessons learned. I'm Dana Steele, and this is hashtag Surviving Alzheimer's, a caregiver's manual, a how-to guide for friends and family, and a safe space to learn and vent and maybe share a glass of wine. Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
At least a couple of times a year, if not more, I have a go-to guest on hashtag Surviving Alzheimer's, and that is our legal expert, Betsy Grubbs. How are you?
I am great. I don't know about the expert part, but I am a lawyer, and they say that it's always the practice of law. So we're always trying to be better.
Well, you look very lawyerly today, so I
Well, thank you.
appreciate that. You've been so much help in the past, not only for me and things with my mom and questions that other people have had, but also our list of questions that it started with a list of questions I put in the back of my book,
Mhm.
Surviving Alzheimer's with Friends, Facebook, and a really big glass of wine, that I call them the talk. It's the talk every family should have. Everyone should ask these questions and have the answers to these questions at any age. And I preach it all the time and I do practice it. Over the years, Betsy and I have updated it, added a few questions, changed a few things. So it was time to jump in and get some updates. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I gave you the latest edition of the talk and you had a chance to go over it. So tell me
I did.
what are there's more documents, there's more things. What do we need to make sure is taken care of?
So one of the things I wanted to talk about today are powers of attorney. And because people don't necessarily understand what that is or what it means, first of all, let's talk about what a power of attorney is. And that is a document that allows someone to make decisions for you if you are not able to. So there's a couple of different types of power of attorney. There are medical powers of attorney that would allow someone to make medical decisions for you if you are unable to. Anybody that's gone to the doctor, they are especially having some procedure at the hospital, they'll say, do you have a medical power of attorney? Because they want to know who can make decisions for you if you cannot. Let's say you're in surgery, something like that, and they need to, go one way or the other. They're going to come out and talk to somebody that has that power of attorney. And that doesn't necessarily allow someone to override your wishes, but especially if you're able to make those decisions for yourself. But it does give the doctors a piece of paper of who they can turn to make those decisions. And it's especially important if you have different cultural or religious beliefs other than the natural progression of who would be able to make those medical decisions for you. So the other type is a business power of attorney, and that's someone that can make business decisions for you. And understand, both of these documents that I'm talking to are while you are still alive. This is not something that controls after you pass. This is while you're still alive. And then a business power of attorney, there's a couple of different types that we have seen. There is a limited power of attorney if you have a specific project that you need some help with. Let's say you need somebody to be able to transfer a car. The Texas Department of Motor Vehicles has a form for someone to be able to transfer a car for you. When you sell a car back to a dealership, you always sign a power of attorney. That's a very common type of power of attorney. There's also maybe a one purpose power of attorney if you're buying or selling a piece of property or selling a house and you need someone to be able to sit there and sign all those papers for you. That could be a very limited type of power of attorney, and both of those would be effective immediately. And then there's also a planning type power of attorney, and that would be what some people refer to as a durable power of attorney. In Texas, the big fancy name for it is a statutory durable power of attorney. It comes straight out of the Texas statute. And that is something that's very helpful in long-term planning as far as, do you want it to be effective immediately or only upon your incapacity? That's a document that you can allow someone to make all kinds of business decisions for you. It also allows you to select whether or not you want your agent to be able to pay themselves out of your money or just reimburse themselves. And these are all decisions that you're going to make as you're going through the power of attorney. And then it also allows you to do some more advanced planning if for some reason you want to give some special powers to people so that they can move your money around. Speaking of moving money, financial institutions also sometimes have their own powers of attorney. I know that a lot of investment houses have their own power of attorney form that they want people to fill out.
We did discover that when I started learning all this at the beginning with Mom, is that I'm like, well, I have a power of attorney. And they're like, well, we can't accept that because we don't know. There could be another power of attorney that was signed after that. It did all the banks, investments, that sort of thing. Mom didn't have any of that, but as I looked into it, I realized we needed those things, but it does get a little overwhelming. So keep going.
Well, and in addressing that, there are some remedies for banks that don't want to accept anything but their form. Unfortunately, they require a lawyer to take it to the courthouse sometimes, or send a letter to the bank and refer them to the statute, because the banks have special legal requirements if they're going to reject a power of attorney that they have to follow. And back to going to the bank, one of the reasons that sometimes people get powers of attorney is for convenience. It might just not be convenient for somebody to go to the bank or to take care, go to the insurance company or whatever, or a physical necessity. Let's say that they have limited mobility and need to just have some help. I had a friend that's what we did with her mother. And her mother was still perfectly capable of taking care of her affairs if somebody could come to her, but she did not have the ability to, because of her mobility issues, to go to the bank in person. I have seen some banks in here recently that have said, well, that's fine. That's a pretty piece of paper. You need to bring that person into the bank. Well, that kind of defeats the whole issue of a power of attorney. So it frustrates lawyers that do these. Banks are very cautious, though, because there are abuses using powers of attorney. I have heard of them referred to as a license to steal. But do you trust the person that you are designating as your agent?
This whole thing started when I lost my mom, Fran Nicholson, to Alzheimer's, and I decided after she passed that I would take everything I learned and do everything I could to help others, because it's, there's just not a definitive manual. There is not a roadmap for all of this. But I did write a book. It is called Surviving Alzheimer's with Friends, Facebook, and a really big glass of wine. The first half is a lot of the posts that I used to chronicle Mom's demise on Facebook so I could share it with friends. And all of the comments we decided to use. Obviously, not all of them because there's way too many, but we tried to take the post and the comments that were the most helpful, that were the most poignant, and the ones that also every once in a while made us laugh. The book is available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. Oh, and the second half of the book is all the things I wish I had known from elder care attorneys like our guest today, Betsy Grubbs. We talked to a neurologist. We talked to a living special, an assisted living specialist who helps you find the right place. I tried to put all of that in the back of the book, including the 28 questions every family should ask and have the answers to. And I'll have more on that a little bit later on in the podcast.
And I will tell you that I have had families that I have counseled, and they want one child to be their medical power of attorney because they're more touchy feely and caring and everything. And then they want, it may not be the same person that's their business power of attorney, because sometimes you have a child or a loved one that's better at handling business versus better at being a caregiver. So, and then also planning for incapacity when you reach the point that you are no longer able to care for your, take care of your business, can't pay your bills anymore, can't, just cannot handle the, as part of the activities of daily living as far as handling your business affairs. So power of attorney is helpful in triggering that, and that may be one of the triggers that puts your power of attorney into play.
I've tried to pass some of this on. We were recently in New York with son 2.0 and his boyfriend. They've moved in together. They have a lovely apartment. They're living together now. And I said, mommy's far away and you're a grown adult. And if something happens to you, I really wish the two of you would have each other's medical power of attorney.
Absolutely.
Maybe a lot of the other things can wait, but you're adults, both of you, and if decisions need to be made, I'm not going to be there. It's going to take me hours to get to the airport and get on a plane and get to you.
Absolutely. And that brings up a very good point, is that we have, whether they are people living together or any type of non-traditional couple situation, or even just a roommate situation. If the statute doesn't allow for just a very close friend or a roommate or a partner that you are not married to make those decisions for you. So
in this environment, this current climate, this is not a political podcast, but in this current climate, even though same-sex marriage is legal today, I would still, even in a same-sex marriage, I would make sure I had all of this, powers of attorney, everything.
Absolutely.
I don't trust anybody at this point.
Well, and I think that that's a very valid point, because you may be in a jurisdiction or in another country that doesn't recognize whatever your common law union is. There are some states in the United States and territories that don't recognize common law marriage, regardless of whether, what the political climate is. There are just some that don't. And that brings up another, and I'm trying not to get into politics, that is something that we're seeing more of an increase in demand for, is people who are concerned about the current political climate and being separated from their families. So they are signing powers of attorney to allow one or the other to handle the business affairs. And we did see that a lot during COVID too, where we had
practice.
Well, we had dad that ended up in the hospital, and mom was not on any of the bank accounts.
I think I even talked about that at some point.
We did. We talked about that, about the guardianship situation. But there are also, while it's not technically a business power of attorney, there are designations that you can do for your minor children of who you would want to be their guardian if you are unable to make decisions for your child. So those are some of the things that I think people really need to think about too.
And another one you and I talked about, which I even used it in my speech. I gave you credit on Sunday. I was talking to a group at the Palm Desert Library, and I said, do you have a funeral directive, a funeral POA,
Yes.
power of attorney? Because what happens if you're very religious and your kids aren't, or your kids have, found Jesus and they want to have a big church funeral for you, and you're like, oh no, you want to have all that written out as well on a legal document.
And I think that that's a very valid point. It especially comes into play with cremation issues because people are very black and white about cremation. And if you want to be cremated and your family doesn't believe that, or the person that's going to be naturally in charge, you need to put somebody in charge that does believe in that. If you have certain religious beliefs that require certain procedures to be followed, you need to designate someone that A, understands them, and B, will try to follow your wishes. Now, the problem with that kind of designation is whoever signs up for that deal agrees to pay for it too.
Yeah, that was another thing I've been trying to tell people is, let me teach you something here. Very important. Newspapers that are still in business do not make money off of advertising. That's how newspapers have always made money. Since the beginning of newspapers was off of advertising. Well, they don't anymore. And much to my surprise, Mom was very adamant. She had written her obits. She was very adamant that they be in the Tyler newspaper, the Fort Bend County newspaper, and the Houston Chronicle. That is how newspapers make money now. It cost us $7,500 to do those three papers.
I believe it. I believe it.
It's really, really expensive.
I do a thing every morning you might want to sign up for. It's called Today's Facts, and that's exactly what it is. Every morning I curate, verify, and write 10 to 20 facts that you can find on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or in a free morning email. You can subscribe at daynasteele.com. And the reason I'm telling you this is that recently there has been a lot of information about home care workers, those that are being deported, home care workers that risk having minimum wage taken away from them, and other stories. Democracy dies in darkness. So sign up for the facts and I'll keep you informed so you don't have to read all of this for 2 to 3 hours every morning. Let's go back to the podcast. Hashtag surviving Alzheimer's.
Before we run out of time on this, so we've got a medical, a business, a limited, a one purpose, a durable, a funeral, banks, investment companies, financial, guardian. You've got to really spell everything out specifically. What if you just write it down and put it in a safe? What if you just write it down yourself, sign it, and have a neighbor, witness it, and you throw it in a file? Does that hold up? Because I think a lot of people are going to say, well, I can't afford an attorney. I can't afford to do this. So how can they do it if they can't afford, but they know they still need to do something like this? Is there a form they can print out and have notarized? So I'm just, I would rather send, you're the lawyer I trust. But I know there's going to be a lot of people that listen to this and come back to me and say, well, I can't afford to do all that. So what would stand up in court? What is legal?
It depends. It depends what the law in your jurisdiction is. And I know that you have a very broad reaching audience. So, and the good lawyer answer is it depends. It depends on what the law is in your state. Now, one of the things I did make some notes here about how do you get one? How do you get one of these documents? So, first of all, check with your financial institution to see if they have a form for a power of attorney. As I said, most brokerage houses have their own. A lot of banks, especially the big banks, have their own power of attorney they want you to fill out. Again, if you're doing something with a car, the DMV has the forms. And then you also can also, with the public resources that might be available, the library, online, texaslawhelp.org, and it's txlawhelp.org, has a lot of these forms that you can download and fill in. They also, and I say this with great caution, they have will forms now too, but the courts and the lawyers, especially the courts, are not really sure about these forms right now. And then legal aid clinics. There will be, in your community, there may be legal aid clinics that are scheduled that you can go sign up for to get these documents. And then you can go online to something like some of the commercially available services. I believe that something is better than nothing. Give it a shot. The problem is if you are using a quote fill in the blank form, which the Texas statutory form looks like, if you just sign it, you haven't done anything. You have to make selections and elections as you go along. And that's why I truly think that an attorney is the best place to get something like this.
And every state has free, legal aid and
sure.
And Google your state free legal aid.
And there are some procedures that do require an attorney or a title company where this power of attorney is filled out, and that's specific to the Texas statute about home equity loans and drawing down on the equity in your home. But generally speaking, Google it, how to get a power of attorney, go to your local library, especially if you have a local law library, and just start with something. But putting it in the safe is probably not the best place to put it, especially if you're the only one that has the combination to the safe, because the power of attorney isn't any good unless somebody knows it exists and B, knows how to get to it. So,
and that's in our list of questions is, what are your passwords?
Right.
Where are your documents?
Where are they?
I can't get into your box at the bank without all of these documents. So if you've got everything locked up in the bank, but you haven't given anybody access or even told anybody where your safety deposit box is, it's not going to do you any good.
The other thing that I recommend too, and then one of the things I do for my clients is after we sign all of their forms, I scan them and I email them to them as, each is a separate document. That way they have them on their phone and their email. So if they're ever at a doctor's office or in an emergency situation, here, I've got it on my phone. Where can I fax it to? I know fax seems kind of antiquated, but a lot of people still use faxes. Where can I email it? How can I print it? I've got it right here. I've got an electronic copy.
The last time we did all of these forms, I got them electronically, and we have them on our phones, we have them on our computers, we have them in the cloud. I am a little anal retentive, and I did send them to each of our sons and say, make sure, especially the youngest one who really doesn't have a filing system. I'm like, you've got to start saving these documents. Now they are printed out in the safe, which he has a key to. But, if something happens to us, you're going to be distraught. You're not going to be thinking straight. We're trying to make this as easy as possible for you.
Absolutely. And remember, these are guidelines for your family. And that's a roadmap for who gets to be in charge, more likely who has to be in charge. And it gives them the power, and it makes things easier because you made a decision about who you want to make these decisions for you. So
in the play, The Woman in the Mirror, based on my book, we turn this into a whole surreal game show. It's time for the talk. It's a fun family game. Every family should sit down and play. Ask the questions, know the answers, so that when you're gone, your family can celebrate you, not litigate you.
I like that.
So
that's absolutely right.
Final last words from Betsy Grubbs, my go-to legal expert, whether you like the title or not. And
get something. Start somewhere. Start simple. That's the main thing. Just have something. Even if you do, just write it out by hand and get it witnessed or notarized. Start somewhere.
Betsy Grubbs is our go-to attorney here at #Surviving Alzheimer's, and I just don't even think I could do a lot of this without her. Not only does she keep us updated several times a year on powers of attorney and other legal documents, but she also helps check my questions I've put together for families. It's a list of questions I like to call the talk, and I encourage you to have the talk with your family. No matter what age, no matter what your politics are, no matter what your health is, these are questions you should ask and answers you will be so happy you have when the time comes. If you go to daynasteele.com, DaynaSteele, click on resources and then click on the talk. There is a downloadable form. So I think it's about 28 questions now. Everything from what do you want us to do with your animal, to what are your passwords, to what do you want your obituaries to say? Do you have a safety deposit box? All of these things, again, you need the answers now rather than later. And thanks to Betsy Grubbs for helping us keep that list updated. I hope this helps a bit, and if it does, share it with others. You cannot do this crazy journey alone. And if you need more information on the book, the play, or more episodes, go to DaynaSteele.com. Surviving Alzheimer's with Friends, Facebook, and a really big glass of wine is available in Kindle and paperback versions on Amazon. #Surviving Alzheimer's is produced by JFA Inc. in association with Blue Squirrel Productions.